Hi, everybody.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for having us. It's such a pleasure to be here to talk about two of our most favorite things, which is being silly and machines.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's just a real pleasure. I'll just tell you a little bit about us and why we are the right people to talk to you about AI and silliness. As this meme suggests, I haven't always worked with machines. I actually started my career as a broadcaster. I was a TV presenter, but I've been working in AI since 2016, writing the personalities. I started off at Microsoft, at Cortana, writing the British personality there. Then I went to Google and launched the Google Assistant, answering questions like, how are you? Do you love me? Do you like the Spice Girls? It did like the Spice Girls by the time I had left. And then I moved to Meta most recently, where I worked on the generative AI team. So thinking about, as AI has evolved and become generative, how it's intersecting with social media. And now Omar and I run Lantyn, because I am a kind of accidental AI expert. And we look at purpose-first AI solutions. So looking at the kind of problem first and then backwards engineering the most creative AI solutions.
Amazing. And hi, everyone. I'm Omar. And my background is I worked in advertising for about 15 years, everything from above the line to below the line. I ended up finding my way to Facebook, and that's where it was just about to become Meta. And it was the first time I really sort of like encountered AI. And, for 15 years of my life, I was a copywriter. And the first time I spoke to a machine that didn't need to go outside to write any copy, I felt like my job was over. So it really became interesting for me to sort of like understand like what this new technology could like do for a creative. But what was really interesting was like this technology, as a copywriter, all uses prompts, which I was like, amazing. I've been using words my whole life, absolutely brilliant. So I left Meta maybe about 3-4 years ago now, and since then I've been directing music videos. My most recent one was for Fatboy Slim. I've made lots of really interesting films for Google, and I'd like to do like work directly with brands and stuff and using AI directly in the market. So it's been super interesting and really fun to actually see how we are taking that principle of like purpose and applying it to creativity, and that's why we ended up making Lantyn.
Yeah. So here we are.
Okay. So I want to tell, when we started writing this presentation, I was really thinking about what is the best way to talk to you about intelligence, and I think it's important to remind ourselves, especially when so many people are talking about how AI is going to not just supplement but completely radically change the creative process, that the first intelligence was us. And it's really amazing that our intelligence has basically sort of lasted from the first fire all the way to the chicken nugget. And I was writing this slide, and I was like, okay, so how can I tell you about human intelligence? I'm it invented everything from going to the moon all the way down to the humble chicken nugget. And I think it's important to sort of remind ourselves of what human intelligence does. That novelty allows us to create something that the machine might struggle with, but let's hear about the machine.
So never before has technology evolved as fast as this. I'm sure you've heard the word AI about 100 times today already. Moore's law told us that technology should double every 2 years. And in the past 10 years, we've advanced AI by about 1 million times. Just to put that into perspective, if air travel had evolved at the same rate as large language models, the average speed of 600 miles per hour would have increased to 900,000 miles per hour. So just to think about what that means, it means a trip from London to New York would take a mere 19 seconds. So if you're feeling overwhelmed about AI, fair play. This is the fastest moving and quickest evolving technology humanity has literally ever seen. And it's the first time that we're staring down the barrel of intelligence and consciousness that might be smarter than us. But let's think about how these machines work. They thrive in pattern recognition and structure. And how do we work as humans? We like play, we like curiosity, we like weirdness. Sometimes we like a bit of chaos. So when we think about how we can use those things as prompts, that's where the magic really starts to happen. And AI might find you the best deal or the fastest way to get somewhere, but it still can't be whimsical, and it definitely can't be silly.
Amazing. Okay, so our talk is called the Human API, and I think it's important for us to talk about what an API is. So maybe we'll go to the next slide, shall we? Amazing.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, so an API is how technology can talk to other technology to create something amazingly novel. You can take an API that has weather, and you can then turn that into a news channel run by zombies. I know because I've done that. It's really, really interesting. Now, what's interesting about the machine API is like a transfer of data, and there's something really beautiful about the similarity about how humans also have a human-to-human API, but unlike data or structure, ours thrives on story, conjecture, joy, laughter, and a whole bunch of other things. So, I mean, both of these are really complicated. Like, you know, I could talk to you about these for ages and bore you to death, but I think there's a really simple way of like showing it. Is that like machines basically think literally. They go from 1 to 0, and a human thinks laterally. And together, I think we, like in our practice, I think what we really love doing is like really trying to find that sweet spot between the literal thinking of a machine, the lateral thinking of a human, because a machine would never have thought of like, you know, a banana being stuck to a wall and that becoming high art. So I think it's incredible where we are.
Mm-hmm. So how do we plug our humanity into a machine? Well, let's take a step back. Have you ever really thought about what silliness is? We all kind of know what it means, but how would you define it? So it's the idea of having or showing a lack of common sense or judgment, being absurd or foolish. And it made us think, to be human by its very nature is at times to be really quite unreasonable, and the absurdity is what makes us brilliant. And we were thinking, how can we bring that into our work? So then I fell down a hole of Albert Camus, the philosopher, and who said the absurd is born out of the confrontation between what we as humans crave and then what is realistic in the world. And it made us think the only reasonable reaction to the planet we're living on, especially now, is to be as silly as possible and totally ridiculous, because it's the absurd that makes things fun.
Okay, so when we started thinking about how to tell you about silliness, I thought it was really important to root silliness in history. Like, we are not at a brand new point in our survival where we need silliness to save us. And so when we started talking about this, I was thinking about what the pitch meeting for this most tremendous moment in history would have been like. Imagine the people, the war lasted for such a long time that someone was willing to listen to another person who said, I know, we need to build a big wooden horse, hide inside it, and then get through the walls, and that's how we're going to win this war, bro. So even in that moment, when you think about the application of silliness to technology, even in ancient history, has still allowed something to happen that actually still moves us and is still part of our culture. And this is another one of my absolute favorite examples, because again, I would have loved to have been in the meeting where they would have gone, okay, I've had this great idea. I want to get on a really big firework. I want to point it at the moon, and then I'm going to let it go. Because the absurdity, the silliness, that absolutely nonsensical idea of strapping yourself to a massive, massive rocket and then trying to get to the moon and back is one of those things that you just that silliness, that sort of idea of curiosity and naivety unlocks something brand new. And I think in the same time of intelligence, we need to start thinking like that. So, I think it's key to sort of understand, much like we have a creative process in advertising, which is tried and tested, and has been for a really long time. I think it's important for us to sort of start plotting out what a silliness process might be. And I know just by its very nature, there's a level of chaos that means that silliness can't have a process. But I think we found some 3 really interesting spaces, especially as we've been working in our consultancy. We had these 3 emerging pillars. So yeah, let's talk about them. Okay, so silliness in the creative process is literally these 3 things. So there's curiosity, naivety, and courage. And I think with each one of these 3 things, it's absolutely fundamental to really understand what these things can unlock individually, but also can unlock together. So obviously we know curiosity allows us to sort of look at which direction we might head in. When we're heading down the path that we already know, so whether that's the normal way that we would attack a brief or any sort of creative issue, the idea of curiosity is to see what might be in a different direction, what is off the path, what is beyond what we already know. And it's also then coupled that with naivety of not relying on our past experiences to guide our future experiences is really critical in the time of AI and generative AI in particular, because otherwise we'll keep making the same thing. And we have a real danger when we have technology that can make creative at such speed that we're going to get to the idea of beige as quickly as possible. And then courage to really step out of what we think is okay and really sort of take those creative chances.
Yeah, because it's scary to be silly. Okay, cool. So you kind of understand the history of silliness, how to be silly, but what does that have to do with AI? Well, right now, manipulating AI in a way to enhance your own creativity is going to be key. It's a new technology and we're all experimenting with it all the time, right? And you definitely can't be silly without playing. Like Einstein said, play is the highest form of research. And might I suggest, as an AI expert that's worked in AI since 2016, some of the funnest ways to experiment with AI right now is vibe coding. I think we've got to this point when we're over the clickbaity titles that AI is going to come for our job. We know that's not necessarily true, although obviously agents are coming incredibly fast, but it's really about the people who know how to use AI effectively who are going to be winning. If you're not familiar with the concept of vibe coding, it's essentially creating products and instructing a machine to code through written prompts. So it's democratizing access to actually building things. No longer do you have to know Python to make an app. And vibe coding's enabled me to build so many things just to help with my everyday life. Everything from a makeup bot that helps me do my makeup for events by breaking it down step by step depending on what makeup products I have and the look that I want to achieve. I've got an AI that reads my AI newsletters for me. We all know how long it is to keep up with the news that seems to change every single day, and then turns it into a script which I can put onto social media. I have one that decodes my dreams for me, and I have a reframer to reframe negative thought patterns for me and my friends and turn it into positive affirmations. And as we're seeing AI as collective human intelligence, it's up to us to decide what we want to create in that through the mode of vibe creating.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think it's probably better if we show you some of our silly examples because I think they're some of my favorite things that we made recently. Okay, so silly examples. I'd like to tell you about Gutsville. A little while ago, I did a gut microbiome test. I had to send off a sample. It came back and it had a whole bunch of numbers on it and a whole bunch of things. I was like, I don't understand what any of this means. How is this going to change my life and which things do I need to do? So I think in pictures, and I was like, okay, I was doing okay for a couple of weeks, but then got straight back on how many Oreos can I eat in a day? And I wondered to myself, now I know that my gut bacteria have a thought process in there, they have an opinion on whether I'm healthy or not. What if I gave them their own TV show? And I'd like you to introduce you to Gutsville. So let's play that.
Okay.
All right, Gut Fam, today I had toast for breakfast, coffee, chicken wrap for lunch, crisps mid-afternoon, and a beer after work. Let's see what you think.
Toast and crisps? That's 2 carbs, no fiber. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. Chicken wrap? Acceptable. Beer? Not ideal. How about a salad tomorrow, champ? Beer! Crisps! Yes! Let's go! I'm T.H. Riving in this chaos!
No dairy today? Again? You are starving me. I'm fading. Like a low-fat ghost.
Chicken wrap? Solid. But beer? You just inflamed me, bro. I'm puffed UP.
Okay, message received. Tomorrow, salad, yogurt, no crisps.
Okay.
Maybe.
I think what's really interesting about that, while that seems really counterintuitive, but the thing that I was actually trying to explore there was can I take data that's invisible, can I turn it into a story that will connect people in a way that no one else has told a story about your gut microbiome before? And I think when we start thinking about what AI does when we apply silliness to it, it allows us to make things that are talkable, memorable even, but basically things that people want to share. I wouldn't want to share my gut microbiome test, but I definitely want to send people a video of what they're saying to each other. So that's silliness.
And how fun to think about what your gut microbiome is saying to the food that you put in.
Yeah.
Something we think about a lot, AI for self-care and how we can make self-care more fun.
Yeah.
That's just a side note. So one of my things I wanted to share with you is I mentioned that I had AI to read my newsletters for me. And then I thought, okay, how can I make that more fun and silly? I used to work in the music industry. I actually started on a YouTube channel that was grime music focused called SBTV. And I thought, what if I can get my AI news delivered to me in rap form? Look, I'm not saying it's going to win any Grammys anytime soon, but it's actually not that bad.
the perfect time for a static dance.
Multimodal always keeps it tight, dominates chat, image code, voice all day, pushing boundaries in every dimension. That's the play. Then it's Claude from Anthropic, smart from safety align, sign obis, haiku, reason and refine, English, math, refine, movie.com 16. At the cannon of old 6 rented, big bang chain, deep logic, closing code, docs, epics, never in a line. It's the gold mile when you need integrity entwined.
So just two of many, many, many ways that we're experimenting using AI in our everyday life to just make things a bit more fun.
I think like what's really interesting is like we on our podcast, which we do every week, right? Where like on our podcast, we basically like what we're trying to do, or like what our sort of like practices between us is like every week we'll build something and then we'll share and talk about it. So rather than just sort of like go, here's a finished product, here's like an alpha product or beta product, etc. It's like, this is a thought and let me sort of share it with you. And in that sort of like thing that we were talking about, like vibe coding and vibe creating, that sort of idea of like being able to use tools that really remove the skill barrier when it comes to what we're making has been fundamental. But I think like, we've been here, told you about silliness, and you're like, okay, great, that's silly, but like, I think it's important, again, like, we grounded silliness at the beginning, like, it's historical, but also silliness sells, and, it's, I really like, when we shared the slides with the AV personality, he was like, we've seen this next slide a lot, but not today. So, really excited to share this like, example with you, but it was the last time that I can really remember that silliness not only changed the fortunes of a business, changed the business fortunes of the brand, of the agency, and of the people that came up with the idea. And it really has had a lasting impact on culture and history. I wonder if you can guess it, but please, can we play it? Like an AI would have never come up with this idea at all. Or maybe it would, but like no one would have like said okay.
Silly, isn't it? So yeah, that was just a very silly idea. And I think what we really wanted to drive home with that was that an AI could never make that. But we've got all these incredible technologies to push our creativity really to the limits, to the nooks and the crannies. And it's about bringing them together in clever new ways that will allow us to make the next gorilla drumming their heart out. So we really hope that we leave you with some ideas and thoughts about what you might vibe code next. And yeah.
See how silly you can be.
Yeah, let's just see how silly you can be. And thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.